Welcome to our line-by-line study of the Gospel of John. We are picking up on John chapter 15, Jesus the true vine. Last time we went clockwise, so this time we'll go counterclockwise, beginning with Adrian here on my right with Jesus the true vine. This is John chapter 15, verses 1 through 11.
Jesus the true vine. I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine grower. He removes every branch in me that bears no fruit. Every branch that bears fruit, he prunes to make it bear more fruit. You have already been cleansed by the word that I have spoken to you. Abide in me as I abide in you. Just as the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine. You are the branches. Those who abide in me and I in them bear much fruit, because apart from me, you can do nothing. Whoever does not abide in me is thrown away like a branch and withers. Such branches are gathered, thrown into the fire, and burned. If you abide in me and my words abide in you, ask for whatever you wish, and it will be done for you. My Father is glorified by this, that you bear much fruit and become my disciples. As the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. Abide in my love. If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. I have said these things to you so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete.
The first two words of John chapter 15, I am. If I didn't tell you which gospel this came from, you'd be able to tell me, because John, the Gospel of John, is famous for Jesus saying, I am, repeatedly. I am this, I am that. So when Jesus says, I am the vine, that must be the Gospel of John. I am the vine, my Father is the vine grower. So if you bear fruit, if you remain in me and bear fruit, so Jesus is the vine. Imagine the vine for a moment. We are the branches. So long as we remain in Jesus, we bear fruit. Can we bear fruit apart from Jesus? If I, a branch, say, I'm tired of this, I'm going to go bear fruit somewhere else. Can I do that? We can't bear fruit apart from the vine. So Jesus was speaking in an analogy, an image that all of his listeners would have understood. Abide in me as I abide in you. That connection that we share, you remain rooted in me and you'll bear fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. In fact, apart from me, what good is the branch but to be burned? I mean, yeah, if you cut the branch from the vine, it's going to wither and die. There's no way that you can take a branch and expect it to bear fruit. But remain in me and you will bear much fruit. Abide in my love. You will abide in my love if you keep my commandments, just as I abide in my Father's love and keep his commandments. We remember the context of John chapter 15. The context is, this is called the Last Supper discourse. When did Jesus share these words? During the Last Supper. So this is sort of Jesus' last will and testament. Remember in chapter 13, Jesus washed the feet of his disciples. Chapter 14, he started giving his Last Supper discourse. My Father has a big mansion with many rooms in it. I'm going to prepare a room for you. Now we're up to this part of the Last Supper discourse of the vine and the branches. Joe, you want to pick it up with verse 12 through 17? We'll go on to Rudy then. Rudy, verses 12 through 17. This is my commandment.
This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. No one has greater love than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends, if you do what I command you. I do not call you servants any longer, because the servant does not know what the master is doing. But I have called you friends, because I have made known to you everything that I have heard from my Father. You do not choose me, but I choose you and I appointed you to go and bear fruit, fruit that will last, so that the Father will give you whatever you ask him in my name. I am giving you these commands so that you may love one another.
We often hear this part of John chapter 15 at weddings. Why would we hear this at weddings? Because of Jesus' command. Love one another as I have loved you. Love preaching on this at weddings, right? And the same love with which Christ loves us is the love that we're called to love one another. So when you see two young people, or maybe not so young people, who are getting married, right? Their challenge is to love one another with the same love that Christ loves them. No greater love has anyone than this, than to lay down one's life for one's friends. Of course, John knew how the story would go. What's going to happen shortly to Jesus? The very next day, he's going to lay down his life for his friends. There is no greater love than to lay down your life for your friends. And he continues, you are not servants. You are not my servants. You are my friends. As my friends, I've chosen you to bear fruit, and you'll bear fruit if you do what? If you love one another. Wow. If you love one another, you'll bear fruit, you'll remain rooted in Christ. And if not, remember this image of God being the vine grower. What does the vine grower do if the branch is not bearing fruit? Prunes it so that it might bear more fruit. Yikes. It's an image that Jesus uses in other gospels as well, of how it is that if the fig tree doesn't bear fruit, it's going to be cut down and thrown into the fire.
So was this a totally different concept versus Judaism, as far as the first, the Bible itself, in other words, yes, they preach love God, or, follow God's word, but Jesus is commanding his disciples to love one another as he has loved them. Was that a difference in theology between the, Jews versus this new concept?
It certainly was a new message. I mean, for the people in Jesus' time, because most of them, of course, were Jews.
Right.
So imagine, they started off as Jews with these 613 or so precepts that they were following. And then suddenly to go from following rules, this focus on rules, it's almost like going from being a child, as children, we give our children all sorts of rules as children. Then as they start to grow in responsibility, then we give them more freedom. Same thing here. We start out with rules, and then Jesus comes along giving us a lot more freedom. 2 rules, the Synoptic Gospels summarize it as loving God and loving one another.
Right.
Here in John, we just hear this message, love one another. You'll bear fruit if you do what? If you love one another. Is it that difficult, people? Love one another. If only it were that easy, huh? Gloria, shall we pick it up with verses 18 through 25, the world's hatred. Now it's going to turn dark. From 18 to 25, the world's hatred.
If the world hates you, be aware that it hated me before it hated you. If you belong to the world would love you as its own. Because you do not belong to the world, but I have chosen you out of the world. Therefore, the world hates you. Remember the word that I said to you. Slaves are not greater than their master. If they persecute me, they will persecute you. If they keep my word, they will keep yours also. But they will do all these things to you on the account of my name, because they do not know him who sent me. If I had not come and spoken to them, they would not have sinned. But now they have no excuse for their sin. Whoever hates me hates my Father also. If I had done among them the works that no one else did, they would not have sinned. But now they have seen and hated both me and my Father. It was to fulfill the word that is written in their laws. They hated me without a cause.
Yikes, that turned dark really quickly. From I am the vine and you are the branches to the world hated me before the world hated you. The world hates you. Oh, what's happening in John's time? Of course, going back to our timeline here, Paul wrote in the 50s. In the 60s, the persecution of Christians began. So by the time John is writing, there's all sorts of persecution going on.
Okay.
So it's almost as if John is writing, telling them, hey, take courage in the fact that they hated me long before they hated you. In fact, if I could tell you what they're going to do to me tomorrow, what are they going to do to Jesus tomorrow? They're going to kill him. The world hated me before it hated you because you don't belong to the world. If you belong to the world would love you. And then what? Is that going to save you? Instead, the world hates you and they will persecute you. Yikes, how's that for good news? They will persecute you on account of my name. And whoever hates me hates the Father. In the same way that up above, Jesus said, whoever loves me loves the one who sent me. He's now saying, whoever hates me hates the one who sent me. That was a dark turn. Janie, where does it go from here? Let's see, that's verses 26 of chapter 15, but why don't we continue on to the next page, say through verse 4.
When the Advocate comes, whom I will send to you from the Father, the Spirit of truth who comes from the Father, he will testify on my behalf. You also are to testify because you have been with me from the beginning. I have said these things to you to keep you from falling away. They will put you out of the synagogues. Indeed, an hour is coming when those who kill you will think that by doing so they are offering worship to God. And they will do this because they have not known the Father or me. But I have said these things to you so that when their hour comes, you may remember that I told you about them.
Yeah. The Advocate, so remember, before Jesus is leaving them, he's promising, I'm going away, but I'm not going to leave you, I'm not going to abandon you. I'm going to ask God to send you an advocate. We remember last time we said that word literally comes from a Greek word meaning a defense attorney. I'm going to give you a defense attorney, someone who's going to stand up for you when you are persecuted, when you need an advocate. The Spirit of truth, and that Spirit of truth will testify on my behalf. Chapter 16. But I just want to warn you, they are going to put you out of the synagogues. Synagogue, who gathered in the synagogues to pray? The Jewish people. So long as we were Jewish, we were protected from persecution. The Roman Empire did not persecute the Jews, at least overtly. So long as we were Jews, we were not persecuted. What happened when suddenly the Jews said, they're not Jews? We were put out of the synagogue and we were exposed to persecution. And the irony of all of this, as Gloria just suggested, they're going to do all this to you thinking that they're doing God's will. Oh, we're being holy and righteous by keeping our congregation pure and pushing out those heretics. And so by doing that, they were exposing the early Christians to harm, to death, to persecution. Isn't it true that religions continue today to persecute others and cause death? When I hear of how it is that churches in Africa, with their staunch anti-LGBTQ messages, that lead to the deaths of all sorts of people in those cultures that are less accepting, I just think to myself, all of this is being committed in the name of religion and church. What Jesus said 2,000 years ago, it continues today. Terry Ann, we'll pick it up with the work of the Spirit. That's chapter 16, verses 4 through 15.
I did not say these things to you from the beginning, because I was with you. But now I am going to him who sent me, yet none of you asks me, where are you going? But because I have said these things to you, sorrow has filled your hearts. Nevertheless, I tell you the truth. It is to your advantage that I go away. For if I do not go away, the advocate will not come to you. But if I go, I will send him to you. And when he comes, he will prove the world wrong about sin and righteousness and judgment. About sin, because they do not believe in me. About righteousness, because I am going to the Father, and you will see me no longer. About judgment, because the ruler of this world has been condemned. I still have many things to say to you, but you cannot bear them now. When the Spirit of truth comes, he will guide you into all the truth, for he will not speak on his own, but will speak whatever he hears, and he will declare to you the things that are to come. He will glorify me, because he will take what is mine and declare it to you. All that the Father has is mine. For this reason I said that he will take what is mine and declare it to you.
Now that we've turned dark and they're aware of the fact that Jesus is going, they're aware of the fact that this is in fact the Last Supper discourse, the last time that they're with their friend. You don't ask me where you're going, but your hearts are filled with sorrow. But don't worry, I need to go. If I don't go, you won't have the advocate, but I'm going to go and I'm going to send this advocate, the Spirit of truth, to be with you. It's a little interlude on sin and righteousness and judgment. But then Jesus concludes by saying, there are a lot of things I haven't told you yet, but you know what? I don't need to tell you, because the Spirit of truth will be with you and will declare to you what I haven't been able to say. Will declare to you what's to come. Sorrow turned to joy. Becky, that's verses 16 through 24.
A little while, and you will no longer see me. And again, a little while, you will see me. Then some of his disciples said to one another, what does he mean by saying to us, a little while, and you will no longer see me, and again, a little while, you will see me, and because I am going to the Father? They said, what does he mean by this, a little while? We do not know what he is talking about. Jesus knew that they wanted to ask him, so he said to them, are you discussing among yourselves what I meant when I said, a little while, and you will no longer see me, and again, a little while, and you will see me? Very truly, I tell you, you will weep and mourn, but the world will rejoice. You will have pain, but your pain will turn into joy. When a woman is in labor, she has pain because her hour has come. But when the child is born, she no longer remembers the anguish because of the joy of having brought a human being into the world. So you have pain now, but I will see you again, and your hearts will rejoice, and no one will take your joy from you. On that day, you will ask nothing of me. Very truly I tell you, if you ask anything of the Father in my name, he will give it to you. Until now, you have not asked for anything in my name. Ask and you will receive, so that your joy may be complete.
Here's this confusing little part here. John chapter 16. A little while and you won't see me again, but a little while and you're going to see me again. What is Jesus smoking? His disciples asked. That's some bad crack, whatever that crack was laced with. Right? What is Jesus talking about? John knew, looking back, what was going to happen. In a little while, they weren't going to see Jesus anymore because what was going to happen to him? He was going to suffer and die.
He's going to come back.
A little while, you are going to see me again. How are they going to see him again? Because he's going to be back. He's going to rise from the dead. And so there's this paradox. You will weep while the world rejoices, but then after that, you will be the ones who are rejoicing. You're like women who are giving birth. Not fun, I'm told. Not fun. But then once it's over, there's a certain joy that is indescribable, and Jesus is using those motherly images to describe his death and resurrection. Wow. Pain now, but I'll see you again. Ask and you will receive. We've heard that in other gospels. The whole ask and you will receive, seek and you will find, knock and the door will be open motif that we find repeated here in the Gospel of John. Peace for the disciples, Mario, that's verses 25 through the end of the chapter 33.
Okay. I have said these things to you in figures of speech. The hour is coming when I will no longer speak to you in figures, but will tell you plainly of the Father. On that day you will ask in my name. I do not say to you that I will ask the Father on your behalf, for the Father himself loves you because you have loved me, and I have believed that I came from God. I came from the Father and have come into the world again. I am leaving the world and I am going to the Father. His disciples said, now you are speaking plainly, not in any figure of speech. Now we do not know all things and do not need to have anyone question you. By this we believe that you came from God. Jesus answered them, do you now believe? The hour is coming. Indeed, it has come when you will be scattered, each one of his home, and you will leave me alone. Yet I am not alone, because the Father is with me. I have said this to you so that in my name, in me, you may have peace. In the world, you face persecution, but take courage. I have conquered the world. The word of the Lord.
The Father loves you because you love me. Just this whole theme of love that we find in chapters 15 and 16 of John is very beautiful. You love me, that doesn't go unrewarded. God loves you in turn. I came from God, the Father. I'm leaving now and going to the Father. And it's now that they say, boy, now that you're speaking more plainly, we believe. And John's gospel is all about belief. John says, I have written these, I've told you these stories that you might believe that Jesus is the Son of God. We believe, they say. And Jesus says, okay, now that you're understanding, finally, I have one thing to say. You're about to be scattered. what's going to happen the next day? Are they all going to be standing by his side with him when he's crucified, when he's carrying the cross, when he dies? They're going to be like sheep that are scattered. But Jesus tells them in the end, he concludes chapter 16 saying, but I'm telling you all this that you might have peace. Take a deep breath. It may be painful now, but it's going to be like childbirth. And once it's over, I'll see you again, and there's going to be great rejoicing. And we all know how the story turns out. Mario?
It says right here, in the world, you face persecution,
Mm-hmm.
but take courage. I have conquered the world. Wow. That is strong. That is strong.
And ultimately, in the resurrection, the early Christian belief was that Christ conquered sin and death. We no longer belong to the world. We belong to Christ.
But some of us, I mean, I'm not generalizing, but some of us have faced persecution.
Yeah.
We have.
Yeah.
That's some people, I mean, there were groups of people that I had to select and just to survive, really. And I'm sure everybody here has had to survive.
We live in a world of human beings who say and do the darndest things, right? We've all been through elementary and middle school and high school. We know what it's like when people are nasty to one another.
Yeah, well,
And there's something about Jesus saying, despite all of that, have courage, be at peace. There may be some pain and suffering, but there's going to be a good ending, I promise. Right, for John chapter 17. So now that we're wrapping up the Last Supper discourse, Jesus is going to pray for his disciples. So we're getting ready. If you flash ahead, chapter 18 is already the betrayal and the arrest. So now chapter 17 of John is sort of the hinge moment between the Last Supper discourse and now getting ready to go out to those events of Jesus' death. So Jesus is going to begin by praying for his disciples. Adrian, chapter 17.
Okay. After Jesus had spoken these words, he looked up to heaven and said, Father, the hour has come. Glorify your Son, so that the Son may glorify you. Since you have given him authority over all people to give eternal life to all whom you have given him. And this is eternal life, that they may know you, the only true God, and Jesus Christ, whom you have sent. I glorified you on earth by finishing the work that you gave me to do. So now, Father, glorify me in your own presence with the glory that I had in your presence before the world existed. Want me to continue?
Why don't we just hold right there?
Okay.
Father, glorify your Son in the same way that I've glorified you. Glorify me. Yeah, go for it, Adrian. 6 through 19.
Sure. I have made your name known to those whom you gave me from the world. They were yours, and you gave them to me, and they have kept your word. Now they know that everything you have given me is from you. For the words that you gave to me, I have given to them, and they have received them, and know in truth that I came from you, and they have believed that you sent me. I am asking on their behalf. I am not asking on behalf of the world, but on behalf of those whom you gave me, because they are yours. All mine are yours, and yours are mine, and I have been glorified in them. And now I am no longer in the world, but they are in the world, and I am coming to you. Holy Father, protect them in your name that you have given me, so that they may be one as we are one. While I was with them, I protected them in your name that you have given me. I guarded them, and not one of them was lost except the one destined to be lost, so that scripture might be might be fulfilled. But now I am coming to you, and I speak these things in the world so that they may have joy made complete in themselves. I have given them your word, and the world has hated them because they do not belong to the world, just as I do not belong to the world. I am not asking you to take them out of the world, but I ask you to protect them from the evil one. They do not belong to the world, just as I do not belong to the world. Sanctify them in the truth. Your word is truth. As you have sent me into the world, so I have sent them into the world. And for their sakes, I sanctify myself, so that they also may be sanctified in truth.
That was an extended prayer that Jesus has, but there's something lovely about seeing how it is that Jesus, in this instance, is praying to God for his friends, right? Lord, these were yours. You gave them to me, these disciples, these friends of mine. They now believe. Remember, John's gospel is all about belief. They now believe that you sent me. Yours are mine, right? These people you sent to me now belong to me. Mine are yours. They belong to you. Protect them, Lord. And then we have in John chapter 17, verse 11, this famous phrase, that they might be one as you, Father, and I are one. This dream of unity, instead of us being the human beings that we are, going off and forming our own groups and being so scattered, there's this dream in John chapter 17, verse 11, that all of us might one day be one. That we might see ourselves as the sisters and brothers, the siblings that we are.
But it also shows, at least my interpretation, is that even though Jesus was divine, it also shows his human nature, his love for
For his friends.
And
he concludes his prayer saying, the world hated them, the world is going to persecute them. Lord, protect them from the evil one. Bad things are coming their way, Lord. I just feel it. Protect them, Lord. Of course, John knew what was coming their way because John lived on the other side of the persecution. And he knew how many of them lost their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And so how reassuring that John has on Jesus' lips this prayer, asking God to protect those who are going to be suffering at the hands of the world. Rudy, you want to finish out the chapter 17? That's verses 20 through 26 of John chapter 17.
I ask not only on behalf of these, but also on behalf of those who believe in me through their word, that they may all be one. As you, Father, are in me, I am in you. May they also be in us, so that the world may believe that you have sent me. The glory that you have given me, I have given them, so that they may be one as we are one. I in them and you in me, that they may become completely one, so that the world may know that you have sent me and have loved them even as you loved me. Father, I desire that those also whom you have given me may be with me where I am, to see my glory which you have given me because you have loved me before the foundation of the world. Righteous Father, the world does not know you, but I know you, and these know that you have sent me. I made your name known to them. I will make it known so that the love with which you have loved may be in them and I in them.
Jesus praying not only for his friends now, he's praying to God saying, I ask for them, my friends, but also for all who believe in me through them. John already knew that all of these friends went out and spread the word of Jesus to other people. So not only is Jesus praying for his friends, but also to all those other people who now believe throughout the world because of his friends. There's something very beautiful about this. You are in me, and I am in you. May they now be in us. All these people who now believe, Lord, in you and in me, may they be in us, that we might all be one, and that they might be with me and see my glory, he says. And that, Father, that your love and my love might be in them. What a beautiful prayer is that. Jesus praying to God saying, may my love be in all of these other people who believe in me. If all these people who came to Holy Family and all these other churches throughout the world had in them the same love that Jesus had. And now that prayer is over and the events of Jesus' passion begin. Passion coming from a fancy Latin word meaning suffering. So I speak of Jesus' passion and death, how he suffered. It typically begins with the story of Jesus' arrest. And what's fascinating about John is that John tells a slightly different story of Jesus' suffering and death, where Jesus is totally in control. Remember, Mark, Matthew, Luke, they have lower pictures of Jesus being more human. John has a much higher picture of Jesus. And so as we listen to beginning in chapter 18, the story of Jesus' suffering, let's hear how it is that Jesus has this all under control. Claudia, are you ready for the betrayal and arrest of Jesus, chapter 18, verses 1 through 11?
The betrayal and arrest of Jesus. After Jesus had spoken these words, he went out with the disciples across the Kidron Valley to a place where they were. There was a garden, which he and his disciples entered. Now Judas, who betrayed him, also knew the place because Jesus often met there with his disciples. So Judas brought a detachment of the soldiers together with the police from the chief priests and the Pharisees. And they came there with lanterns and torches and weapons. Then Jesus, knowing all that was to happen to him, came forward and asked them, "Whom are you looking for?" They answered, "Jesus of Nazareth." Jesus replied, "I am he." Judas, who betrayed him, was standing with them. When Jesus said to them, "I am he," they stepped back and fell to the ground. Again, he asked them, "Who are you looking for?" And they said, "Jesus of Nazareth." Jesus answered, "I told you that I am he. So if you are looking for me, let these people go." This was to fulfill the word that he had spoken. "I did not lose a single one of these whom you gave me." Then Simon Peter, who had a sword, drew it, struck the high priest's slave, and cut off his right ear. The slave's name was Malchus. Jesus said to Peter, "Put your sword back into the sheath. And am I not to drink the cup that the Father has given me?"
Whew. We've heard this story before, but there's some interesting changes to it. In this story, we don't refer to it as the garden. We don't refer to the garden by name. In all the other gospels, we give the garden a name. What's that garden's name? Gethsemane. This is the one gospel that doesn't say the name. It tells us the location. They went across the Kidron Valley to a garden, and Judas knew where they were. So Judas came bringing soldiers and the police of the Pharisees and the chief priests. He goes into detail of what they were carrying: lanterns and torches and weapons. Weapons as if coming out against someone that they needed to subdue in some way because of his power. Lanterns and torches. Why did they need lanterns and torches? What time of day does that connote? That it was dark. So now there's this image that John is giving about how it is that this light, remember the gospel on Sunday? John came testifying to the light. Who is the light of the world? Jesus. But now in this moment, the darkness has come. Darkness has come to the world now. Gospel of John has a scene that we don't see in any of the other gospels of Jesus standing up and saying, "Who are you looking for?" Of course, he knows the answer. They say, "We're looking for Jesus of Nazareth." "I am he." Did you see the response of the people when he says, "I am he"? This is the Gospel of John, where Jesus is superhuman. They stepped back and they fell as if cowering in fear. He asked them again, "Who are you looking for?" "We're looking for Jesus of Nazareth." "I am he." And then it was at that point that John explains why the disciples were not with Jesus from that moment forward, because Jesus said, "Let them go."
In this story, in our story, didn't Judas kiss Jesus on the cheek to identify? But in this story, it doesn't.
Exactly. So we see some of the differences, right? In the other Gospels, Judas says, "Hey, you'll know which one it is because I'm going to go up to him and give him a kiss. I'm going to greet him," betraying him with a kiss. No details like that in here. Other details in other Gospels, they have, the disciples scattering, and one of them, they figure when we hear the word Mark, we figure that the Gospel of Mark was written in the name of a young disciple called John Mark. He's the one in the Gospel who wanted to get away from Jesus so quickly that it's sort of like they grabbed whatever loincloth was around his waist and he ran off naked. We don't have those details in John's telling of the story. John paints a story of Jesus being very much in control. Here we are in the garden. Here come the soldiers and police, and you can just imagine superhero Jesus standing up to them and saying, "Who are you looking for?"
Who portrayed the ear? The ear back on.
Yeah, so another fascinating story that we have in the Gospel of John. We'll get to it in just a moment. First, let's acknowledge that John is saying when Jesus says, "Let them go," that was to fulfill a prophecy. And so he points to the prophecy where the prophet says, "I did not lose a single one." Right? Did you notice Jesus was the only one who died that day? None of his friends died. John explained it in this way. Oh, that was to fulfill the prophecy. But then, as Rudy points out, now we come to this fascinating story of the chief priest's servant who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, because when Peter decided that Peter was going to help his friend out, he drew his sword, and according to this story in the Gospel of John, he cut off the ear of the chief priest's servant, Malchus. And we don't have in this story of Jesus touching the servant and healing him. Other Gospels, we have that. And of course, when you see the movies of Jesus, we tend to bring all those four stories together and try to draw a cohesive picture of Jesus. So often, we'll see the scene of Jesus reaching out and touching the servant's ear and him being okay. Again, demonstrating Jesus' power. But here, Jesus' words are, "Peter, put your sword away. Put it back in its sheath. Am I not to drink the cup that the Father has given me?" That cup we saw in other Gospels is essentially the cup of suffering. Imagine a cup filled with a bitter poison. If you drink of the cup, if you drink of this cup, you're going to die. That's the image that we have in the other Gospels where Jesus says, Lord, take this cup away from me. Take this cup. What cup? It's a figure of speech. It's not a literal cup. It's a figure of speech saying, I don't want to drink of this. I don't want to die. In the other Gospels, he says, I don't want to die. I don't want to drink of this cup, but if it is your will, thy will be done. Here in the Gospel of John, Jesus is totally in control. He says, put your sword back. Am I not to drink the cup that my Father has given me? God is passing me the cup. I'm going to drink from it. I'm going to die. Tomorrow this time, I will be dead. Yikes. Ready for Jesus before the high priest and Peter denying Jesus? Are we up to Janie? This is chapter 18, verses 12 through 18.
Jesus for the high priest. So the soldiers, their officer, and the Jewish police arrested Jesus and bound him. First, they took him to Annas, who was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, the high priest that year. Caiaphas was the one who had advised the Jews that it was better to have one person die for the people. Peter denies Jesus. Simon, Peter, and another disciple followed Jesus. Since that disciple was known to the high priest, he went with Jesus into the courtyard of the high priest. But Peter was standing outside at the gate. So the other disciple, who was known to the high priest, went out, spoke to the woman who guarded the gate, and brought Peter in. The woman said to Peter, You are not also one of this man's disciples, are you? He said, I am not. Now the slaves and the police had made a charcoal fire because it was cold, and they were standing around it and warming themselves. Peter also was standing with them and warming himself.
We know where this story is going in just a moment, but backing up, Jesus is arrested and bound. He's tied up, right? They have now subdued him. They take him before Annas and Caiaphas, or Cephas. The challenge is we're working with ancient languages here that we're trying to translate their names into English, so there is no single way to pronounce many of these names. Follow me? But it was the Caiaphas principle. The Caiaphas principle is how it is that sometimes you've got to make sacrifices for the good of the people, right? Caiaphas says it's better for one person to die than for the Romans to come in and see the chaos that's caused here and cause the death of more people than that. The disciple brings Peter into the courtyard now, outside of where Jesus is. A woman sees him and says, You're one of his friends, aren't you? I am not. Strike one. We know what was prophesied back in chapter 13, how it was that before the cock crowed, Peter was going to deny Jesus 3 times. He's denied him once. Now we're around the fire. But John has a great literary technique where John is going to cut from that scene now, and we're going to come back to Peter in a moment. So he's essentially going to intersperse the story of Peter denying or betraying Jesus, and he's going to intersperse other elements of the story. Terry Ann, that brings us up to the high priest questions Jesus, and Peter denies Jesus again, verses 19 through 27.
Then the high priest questioned Jesus about his disciples and about his teaching. Jesus answered, I have spoken openly to the world. I have always taught in synagogues and in the temple where all the Jews come together. I have said nothing in secret. Why do you ask me? Ask those who heard what I said to them. They know what I said. When he had said this, one of the police standing nearby struck Jesus on the face, saying, Is that how you answer the high priest? Jesus answered, If I have spoken wrongly, testify to the wrong. But if I have spoken rightly, why do you strike me? Then Annas sent him bound to Caiaphas the high priest. Now Simon Peter was standing and warming himself. They asked him, "You are not also one of his disciples, are you?" He denied it and said, "I am not." One of the slaves of the high priest, a relative of the man whose ear Peter had cut off, asked, "Did I not see you in the garden with him?" Again, Peter denied it, and at that moment the cock crowed.
So there's this fascinating dynamic here. The Jewish people had a custom where you did not hold trials at night. There was the chance of injustice occurring if that happened, right? Instead,
Because of
everyone go
darkness.
home, get a good night's sleep. We'll come back in the morning and we'll consider the matter. What's happening in this story? They're trying him at night. Why, Adrian? The whole symbolism of darkness. Darkness has come to the world now. He's not even getting a fair trial. Jesus says to them, I've spoken openly. There's nothing I've said that's secret here. If you have any questions, you can ask any one of the people who heard me. Police officer slaps him. Really example of police violence here, right? But you have the temple police striking him, and then Annas deciding to send him to Caiaphas. And then we take a break. We go back to the story of Jesus, of Peter's denial. He'd already said, I am not. Are you his friend? I am not. He said it once. Now they ask him again, didn't we see you in the garden? Aren't you his friend? I am not. He denies Jesus a third time. And what immediately happens? The cock crows, just as Jesus had predicted. Jesus before Pilate. Becky, this is verses 28 through 38, and then we'll finish it out.
Then they took Jesus from Caiaphas to Pilate's headquarters. It was early in the morning. They themselves did not enter the headquarters so as to avoid ritual defilement and to be able to eat the Passover. So Pilate went out to them and said, "What accusation do you bring against this man?" They answered, "If this man were not a criminal, we would not have handed him over to you." Pilate said to them, "Take him yourselves and judge him according to your law." The Jews replied, "We are not permitted to put anyone to death." This was to fulfill what Jesus had said when he indicated the kind of death he was to die. Then Pilate entered the headquarters again, summoned Jesus, and asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered, "Do you ask this on your own, or did others tell you about me?" Pilate replied, "I am not a Jew, am I? Your own nation and the chief priests have handed you over to me. What have you done?" Jesus answered, "My kingdom does not belong to this world. If my kingdom belonged to this world, my followers would be fighting to keep me from being handed over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not from here." Pilate asked him, "So you are a king?" Jesus answered, "You say that I am a king. For this I was born, and for this I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice." Pilate asked him, "What is truth?"
Pilate. So now we have the famous scene of Jesus coming before Pilate. Who is Pilate? Pilate was the governor, the prefect of that area. So he was the representative of the Roman government. Why were the chief priests and the Pharisees taking Jesus to the Roman Empire's representative in that area?
Because they knew that he could actually put him to death.
Because he could actually kill them, and they couldn't. So the Jews could not do that. They were hoping that he would do what they could not do, right? Pilate says to them, "Judge him according to your law," and that's where they point out, wait a minute, we can't do this. This has got to be up to you. If he's going to die, you've got to be the one to do this. Pilate goes inside and asks Jesus, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Dangerous question. Jesus says, "Are you asking this on your own behalf, or is this what you've heard from others?" He says, "What do you mean on my own behalf? I'm not a Jew." And then Jesus comes into this very dangerous language about his kingdom. And if he has a kingdom, then one might presume that he was, in fact, a king. Which is why Pilate says, so you are a king. He doesn't directly answer him. Instead, his answer more resembles about why it is for this I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Then we get that famous line by Pontius Pilate, "What is truth?" Mario, do you want to finish this out there? The end of chapter 19 is verses 38 through 40.
Very last paragraph.
Jesus sentenced to death.
Okay. Pilate asked him, "What is truth?" After he had said this, he went out to the Jews again and told them, "I find no cause against him, but you have a custom that I release someone for you at the Passover. Do you want me to release for you the king of the Jews?" They shouted in reply, "Not this man, but Barabbas." Now Barabbas was a rebel.
Hi. We all know where this is going, even though that's the end of chapter 19. We know where chapter 20 is going to, that's the end of chapter 18. We know where chapter 19 is going to pick up, right? Chapter 18 finishes with Pilate saying, I'm not seeing what's wrong here. I'm not finding any justification to execute this man. But I tell you what, I could release him to you because we do have a custom on the Passover. According to this, I have the custom of releasing to you one person every Passover, so let me release him to you. Is that going to work? Mario mentions another guy, Barabbas. Do you want me to release to you the king of the Jews? Please say yes. They say no.
No. Because
Give
they
us
didn't recognize him as the
Barabbas.
king.
Give us Barabbas instead. A rebel, a traitor. Thanks. So when we come back after Christmas, after the holidays, we'll have one more class in which we speak of the Gospel of John, chapters 19, 20, and 21, and that's it. As we can imagine, the next chapter is going to be Jesus' death, and then after that we have the resurrection stories. Final questions or comments on the Gospel of John this evening?
It was very easy to differentiate between what was religious custom versus civil custom. And they had to work with each other in order to get what they wanted.
They definitely had to do that. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and forever shall be, a world without end.